It was supposed to be an uneventful night. I had the house to myself, which wasn't uncommon. My sister, Lillian, spent most nights at her boyfriend's place, leaving me with the upstairs unit of the two-story duplex we shared. She had the downstairs apartment, I had the upper one, and most nights, I enjoyed the solitude. At 30 years old, I shouldn't have been spooked by being alone. But sometimes, just sometimes, there was something about the silence of an empty house that made me uneasy. That night, I settled into my couch with a horror movie, the dim glow of the screen casting long shadows along the open layout space. My back was to the kitchen, leaving a vast, empty stretch of darkness behind me. The kind of darkness that made you glance over your shoulder more often than you'd like to admit. After the movie, I turned off the lights, brushed my teeth, and went to bed, expecting an uninterrupted night. But at some point, deep in the early hours, I woke up. At first, I wasn't sure why. Then I heard it. A voice. A woman's voice, calling my name from downstairs. Groggy, disoriented, I sat up, heart pounding. It sounded just like Lillian. But I knew she wasn't supposed to be home. Maybe she had a fight with her boyfriend? Maybe she needed something? Still half asleep, I got out of bed and stepped into the hallway. The house was pitch black. I switched on the hall light, then made my way through the living room, pausing near the stairs. Lillian, I called. The voice responded from below. Come here. I frowned. Something was off. The way she said it, so monotone, so emotionless, it made my skin prickle. I hesitated, but then I heard it again, more insistent. Come here. Reluctantly, I descended the stairs, feeling along the wall for the light switch in the foyer. My fingers brushed against it, and I flipped it on. The dull yellow glow illuminated the small entryway and part of the kitchen beyond. Empty. I stepped further in, peering around the corner into her living room. No one. A shiver crawled up my spine. Lillian. I called again, louder this time. Silence. And then, something fell in her bedroom. A distinct thump, like an object dropping to the floor. My breath hitched. I had just checked that room. It had been empty. A sudden, overpowering instinct to get out gripped me. I backed away, turning off the light as I hurried upstairs. Back in my room, I locked the door and grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I called my sister. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. I sat on my bed, staring at the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. Had I imagined it? Was it just my mind playing tricks on me? Eventually, exhaustion won. At some point, I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through my curtains. I grabbed my phone and saw a message from Lillian. Why did you call me at 1 a.m.? I immediately responded. Were you home last night? Seconds later, the reply came. No. I stayed at Caleb's. Why? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I crept downstairs, back to her apartment. Everything looked exactly as it had the night before. No sign of movement, no sign that anyone had been there. I stepped cautiously into her bedroom. My eyes scanned the floor, searching for whatever had made the noise. Nothing. Nothing was out of place. There was no fallen object, no reason for that sound. I backed out of the room, feeling the hairs on my arms rise. Had I imagined the voice? The noise? Was it just exhaustion warping my senses? Or, the alternative was much worse. Because if I hadn't imagined it, then someone, or something, had been inside the house with me that night. And I had walked right into its trap. Story 2. I was 14 when it happened. My mom was working a night shift at the hospital, leaving me home alone for the night. It wasn't the first time. I'd gotten used to it over the years. She worked long hours, and my older brother had already moved out for college. That night, a girl I was talking to, Emily, had come over to hang out. We watched movies in my room, sprawled out on my bed, lost in the glow of the screen. At some point, her phone buzzed. Her parents were strict. They wanted her home before midnight. She sighed, grabbed her coat, and left. That's when the night turned strange. I stayed in my room, flipping through channels, unable to focus on anything. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hyper-aware of every creak and groan the walls make. Then I heard it, a scraping sound. It was subtle at first, just a faint movement against the wood outside. My bedroom was on the second floor, and my window overlooked the backyard. That sound, it came from the deck. I frowned, got up, and went to the window, expecting to see Emily down there, maybe having second thoughts about leaving. But it wasn't her. A man sat in one of the patio chairs, facing the house. The dim light from the neighbor's porch barely illuminated him, just enough for me to see his outline. His shoulders were hunched forward, his head tilted slightly up, as if he had been staring at my window the entire time. My stomach clenched. I squinted through the darkness, my fingers tightening on the windowsill. "Emily," I called out hesitantly, hoping against all logic that it was just some stupid misunderstanding. The figure shifted, slowly. Then his head tilted upward even more, and I saw the gleam of his teeth. He was grinning. A cold wave of fear crashed over me. My body reacted before my mind did. I stumbled back from the window, heart hammering. My phone was on the bed. I grabbed it, fingers shaking, and opened my group chat. "Me, is anyone messing with me right now?" A few replies came in, confused. No one was near my house. I hesitated, then forced myself to look outside again. He was still there. But now, his shoulders were moving. He was laughing. I couldn't hear it, but I could see the way his body shook with silent laughter. His chest rising and falling, his fingers gripping the arms of the chair. I felt paralyzed, my body frozen in the middle of the room. Then he moved. His hands pressed against the armrests, and he slowly stood up. Not like a normal person, not with any rush or effort. He unfolded himself, stretching tall, his body swaying slightly. His head stayed locked onto my window, as if his gaze never broke away. And then he took a step forward. I jerked away from the window, turned off my TV, and crouched down beside my bed, my breath coming in short, fast bursts. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to make a sound. For what felt like an eternity, I sat there in the darkness, listening. Then came the next sound. The back door rattled. I choked on a breath, my pulse pounding in my ears. He was trying to get inside. My first instinct was to run downstairs and lock the doors, but I hesitated. If he saw me through the windows, would that make it worse? Would he break the glass? I stayed put. The rattling stopped. Silence. Then, click. My blood ran cold. The front door handle. He was trying that one too. I grabbed my phone with sweaty fingers and opened the dial pad. I was about to call 911 when a voice, right outside my window. "I see you." I stopped breathing. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to turn my head. But I couldn't help it. I glanced, just barely, toward the window. He was there, right outside, pressed against the glass. A distorted face, his lips curled into that same horrible grin, his hands spread out against the window pane like he wanted to crawl through. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. Then he tapped. 1, 2, 3 slow taps against the glass, each one deliberate, patient. Something in me snapped. I shot up, sprinted out of my room, slammed the door behind me, and ran down the stairs. My hands fumbled with the front door locks, adrenaline making me clumsy. I twisted the deadbolt, yanked the door open, and ran straight into the cold night air. I didn't stop. I ran to my neighbor's house, banged on the door until their porch light flicked on. Their son, Kyle, opened the door, bleary-eyed. I pushed past him, breathless. "Someone," I gasped. "Someone's outside my house." Kyle's dad appeared behind him, already reaching for his phone. "Stay here," he said, grabbing a bat. He disappeared into the night. I sat on their couch, shaking, waiting for the sound of sirens. Minutes later, Kyle's dad returned. His expression was unreadable. "There's no one there," he said. I stared at him. "What?" "No footprints. No sign of anyone on the deck. The back door? Still locked." I felt like I was going to be sick. I knew what I saw. I knew what I heard. But there was nothing. When the police arrived, they took my statement, checked the property, but found nothing unusual. No signs of forced entry, no disturbances. I spent the rest of the night at Kyle's house, too afraid to go back. The next day, when I finally mustered the courage to return home, I checked the deck. The chair, the one he had been sitting in, was gone. Vanished. As if no one had ever been there at all. But I know he was. And sometimes, even now, I wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I hear the slow, deliberate sound of tapping on my window. 3 soft taps. Just waiting for me to look. Story 3. I was 10 years old the night everything changed. Our house wasn't anything special, just a small 2-story place in a quiet neighborhood. My parents, my 14-year-old brother Ethan, my 5-year-old sister Claire, and me, just a normal family with normal lives. That Friday night, Ethan was out with his friends, and I was in my room, lost in my PlayStation game, when I heard my mother's voice crack in a way I had never heard before. I froze, my fingers hovering over the controller. Then came the sound of my dad rushing down the stairs, the shuffle of coats being grabbed, the front door swinging open. Ethan had been hit by a car. I barely had time to process what was happening before my parents were gone, Claire clinging to my mom's hand as they rushed to the hospital. And just like that, I was alone. I told myself it was fine. Ethan would be okay. He had to be okay. My dad had reassured my mom before they left, saying it was just a broken leg, nothing worse. Still, something about the way my mom had screamed over the phone made me uneasy. I tried to go back to my game, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. My room felt too big, the house too quiet. Then the front door opened. I froze, my stomach twisting into knots. I hadn't heard a car pull up. Had my parents come back for something? I turned off my game, listening. Silence. I frowned, sliding off my bed. The lights downstairs were still off. If it was my parents, wouldn't they be moving around? I crept to my door, slowly opening it just a crack. That's when I saw them. 3 shadowy figures stood in the living room below. They weren't my family. They were tall, unfamiliar. They moved slowly, deliberately, their heads tilting as they scanned the room. I could barely breathe. I closed my door too loud, and my heart nearly stopped. I scrambled backward, eyes locked on the doorknob. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a footstep on the stairs. I clamped a hand over my mouth, biting down hard to keep from making a sound. Another footstep, and another. They were coming up. I looked around wildly. My bed? No, too obvious. Under the desk? No, too small. The closet. I darted inside, pressing myself behind stacks of boxes and old winter coats, sinking as deep into the shadows as I could. The door to my bedroom creaked open. Silence. For a moment, I let myself believe they had walked away. That maybe, just maybe, I had imagined it. Then the closet door opened. I stopped breathing. From my hiding spot, I could barely see him, a tall, wiry man with a hood covering his face. He stood there, unmoving, looking. The silence stretched forever. He was waiting, listening. Could he see me? My lungs burned, screaming for air. I stayed still. 20 seconds. 30. Then he closed the door. I nearly sobbed in relief. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Leaving my room. I waited, then waited longer. An hour, maybe 2. I wasn't sure anymore. When I finally crawled out, my legs were shaking so bad I could barely stand. The house was silent again. I moved to the top of the stairs, gripping the banister, my heart slamming in my chest. The front door was open. The house was empty. Gone. But as I stepped into the living room, I noticed something that made my blood turn to ice. The closet door in the hallway, the one under the stairs, was open. I hadn't opened it. And sitting inside, in the darkness, was a single chair, facing the stairs, like someone had been waiting, watching. I ran to the neighbors, pounded on their door, and barely managed to choke out what had happened before they called the police. When my parents got home hours later, the police were still there, searching for any signs of forced entry. They found none. The only thing out of place? That single chair, waiting. And to this day, I can't shake the feeling that whoever had been inside that house, whoever had stood in my room, opened my closet, watched me, had been planning to stay much, much longer.